Grapes. Who doesn't love a good grape, right? Because they're sweet. But you know which ones you really probably should stay away from? All of them are full of sugar. But these cotton candy grapes, they are modified and they're full of extra sugar. So don't use them.
May as well be equal to this. But in all reality, grapes can be utilized basically post-workout and pre-workout. They're good energy sources and quick sources of sugar. It's going to be a lot better than, say, just that piece of candy still. Avocados, they're terrific. Sometimes it's hard to pick out which one's ripe. So whenever you're doing this, you want to kind of give the touch test first. These are actually ready to go. So whenever they have more of the brown and very little of the green, that's whenever they're going to spread very nicely. I actually have an avocado every morning with some sourdough toast, which is a good source of toast, and we'll get to that here later. But basically, these are a good source of your natural fats. Again, you don't want to do too much natural fat or any fat in abundance, but whenever you're going for a good substitute and you need to up that good fat, this is the way to go.
Fat is really important, especially in women and hormones. We have this thing of reduce fat, get rid of all the fat. That's not true. You want to reduce and completely get rid of trans fats, but saturated fats still have some good things, meats, that kind of thing, but you want to reduce that. 12 to 16 grams a day is what's recommended. And then polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats are great, so you want to up those. And really, again, those are important for hormone balance, they're important for brain health. I think a lot of this Alzheimer's and things we have is from an aggressive reduction in cholesterol numbers, and we've kind of hurt the brain in that way too. So you got to be careful, it's got to be a good balance. You know what these baby carrots are great for? Beta carotene, baby. Vision.
Carotene?
That's right. Vision, right? These are great, immune and vision and digestion. So eat all the baby carrots you want.
Peppers, these are free foods, and do you know what's free? Well, everybody likes free, right? So these are free foods, and whenever I say that, I mean that you can eat these in such an abundance that it's really not going to have a torturous impact on what your intake is for the day. So honestly, I like 2 or 3 of these in a good salad with some spinach. They give that extra snap, and they have a lot of extra micronutrients that you wouldn't get in the normal day.
Right here, some celery. I think you burn just as much crunching on it as you do that it actually has in it.
All right, we all go nuts over nuts, right? I know I do. Pistachios, walnuts, cashews, they're a little higher, but almonds are a really good choice as well. But if we're looking for that really good source of good fats, again, these and the avocados, you can't go wrong.
Pistachios are very high in antioxidants, and in particular can be lower calorie than some of the other ones, okay? Walnuts, great for omega-3s, which is your antioxidant fatty acid, versus omega-6, which is a little more pro-inflammatory. So those are your walnuts. Also, Brazil nuts are very high in selenium, more than any of the other nuts. So that's really good if you have like autoimmune thyroid conditions such as Hashimoto's. Brazil nuts. Eden, is that a banana in your pants, or are you just happy to see me?
Actually, it's a full bundle. So with a banana, it really doesn't matter if you go organic or if you go just regular, because the peels are so thick that any of the pesticides that are sprayed on them really don't enter into the fruit necessarily all the time.
Yes. And also very high in potassium, right? So if you're having a lot of muscle cramps or you tend to be on the lower side, that might be a great source. It can be a little higher in sugars and carbs and things, so you gotta watch eating a ton of them, but good for potassium. So.
I also recommend the ones that are slightly green. They're a little less on the glycemic index. As the banana sets around and as it gets a little bit more brown, then the sugar increases.
All right, guys, if you're looking for a little natural sweetener, you can go honey. You want to stick with local honey within like a 20-mile radius of where you live. That can be really good for allergies. If you're putting a little teaspoon in your tea every day, it can actually help with a tolerance to your allergies, and then within a year, they say it can really significantly cut down on those allergy symptoms. So honey's the way to go. It's also antimicrobial, antifungal, got a lot of good properties like that.
Salad dressing, how do you choose? There's a ton. I'll tell you how. You want to pick the ones that have more of an olive oil base and something that is more natural, closer to just the natural state of oil itself. Anything that typically has a little bit more of a synthetic blend or something that is free may not be the best source. However, you can find everything you need here. So everybody loves Olive Garden, right? And this is actually my choice. Granted, you know, not every source is the cleanest, but in my cabinet, this is what I'm getting.
All right, let's talk about seed oils, okay? Seed oils have been for a long time kind of propelled as this healthy thing, right? They're highly processed. They take it from the seed and then they grind it down and get the pulp, okay? Not necessarily healthy. It can cause a lot of inflammatory responses, a lot of gut issues. So there's more and more research literature coming out that these may not be the best things. I'm going to show you some examples of this, okay? We've got soybean, rapeseed oil, okay? Those are two on this one. We've got the soybean oil, the cottonseed oil. What do you got on yours, Eden?
Actually, this one's got less than 5 ingredients, so this would be typically your better choice among peanut butters.
But yeah, so canola oil is another seed oil you got to watch for. So what's the difference between that and say avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil? Those are all actually taken from the fruits and not the seed, okay? So those tend to be a little healthier, and that's kind of what you want to stick with. We've talked about sugars and fats. I want to talk about salt now. Salt's really big, especially with hypertension, and can cause a lot of problems. They recommend about 2,300 milligrams in your daily diet for an average person. So if you're looking for reduced sodiums, because a lot of people say, hey, I don't need any extra salt, I don't salt anything. That doesn't mean you're not going over, because almost everything has a ton of salt in it added now, okay? So what does it mean when it's just a reduced sodium, like this one right here? Reduced sodium just means there's 25% less sodium than in the traditional, okay? So you might still have a ton of sodium in a reduced sodium thing. So you really got to go under that label there, and you got to look at how much salt is in the nutrition facts, okay? There's also low and very low. Low is 140 milligrams of sodium or less, and very low is 35 milligrams of sodium or less. So those are really good options, especially if you're trying to watch that salt intake.
Speaking of sodium, something that people don't think about is the amount of sodium inside of cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is a great source of protein. It is a dairy source, so it can have that inflammation effect on some people, especially with that autoimmune. However, if you're going to go with the cottage cheese, I recommend something that is pure and natural, and we want to go ahead and make sure that it's not the 0.5% or the low fat or anything like that. You want to go with the full fat content. Large curd is typically my favorite.
Almond milk. I'm a huge fan of almond milk, but there's some things you got to watch out for, okay? First of all, any of those gums or thickeners, not really good for gut. You also want to make sure you're getting unsweetened, okay? You don't want to have extra sugars in there. Like on this one, you can see extra sugars and cane sugar, cocoa, seed oils, that kind of thing. Carrageenan is a big one that they put in almond milk, and you got to be really careful with that one, because it's a gel used to thicken things up, but it can cause some gut irritation and also interfere with certain medications. So you got to be a little careful about that. But almond milk is a great choice if you get the right one. Okay, guys, people love yogurt, right? Yogurt's good for probiotics, that kind of thing. But you got to watch with regular sugars. The biggest thing is there's a ton of added sugars in these guys. You really got to be careful with that. So that brings us to some Greek yogurt.
Yeah, the Chobani Greek yogurt is the best way to go. It's also the thicker, it's also a little bit more tasty, and it's got a higher count of protein across the board than traditional other brands. Also, the sugar content is about the same, but again, those sugars can be used pre and post workout, so it's all about timing when it comes to that. All right, butter. Sure, everybody likes a good butter, right? Well, if I had to choose, I'm gonna go with the Land O'Lakes. Anything that are fats and they are solid at room temperature, you kind of want to steer clear of. But in this case, I will make this an exception just because A, I was raised on this, but also a little bit of that saturated fat that's not typically the good source is okay on a small amount.
Or you could be like Jocelyn, just make your own butter from scratch.
Yeah, which is a great option.
Eggs are fabulous for protein. They've gotten a bad rap over the years, but honestly in the bodybuilding world and fitness industry, they've been a huge staple, right? I'm doing a podcast recently you can check out on egg whites, but in the meantime, I want to give you some labeling info. So cage-free, what's that mean? That means the hen's not in the cage, right? There's no like enclosure for the hen. What does free range mean? That means they can go outside. But you gotta be careful with these things. Eden loves her chickens, by the way.
Free range.
But free range and cage free, it doesn't give you any other parameters. So maybe they can only move a little bit. They can't do what Eden just did. We don't know, okay? So it can be very inconsistent. You gotta watch out for that. Organic though, what does organic mean when you see that? That's the best, especially certified. That means there's no antibiotics, there's no GMO products, there's no pesticides, fertilizers, any of that stuff, radiation, anything. So those are the best way to go.
And back to what Jodelle was saying about the eggs and how they hit a bad rap. Basically, it's because of the cholesterol. Now, if you're going to a normal physician, a lot of times they'll tell you, oh, your cholesterol is high, let's cut the cholesterol. The first thing that comes to mind is cutting out eggs. That's not the deal. You don't need to do that. Actually, what raises cholesterol are white refined carbohydrates. And these things just get a bad rap, but you need them for your brain. There's a lot of cholesterol in your brain. That's what it's primarily made up of. So don't cut these guys out.
My advice is 3 eggs a day, fully loaded, are fine. After that, if you want to add eggs, just do the egg whites. That's fine too. And you can get those on our site now too.
Right here. Is that patty pastry?
No, actually it's Little Debbie. And today I want to talk to you about the serving size, guys. You might think these are mini donuts, right? And if you're like me, you might think a bag is a serving size, okay? But actually, if you look right up here at the top, it's now in bold. 4 of these little donuts. Can you imagine 4 donuts filling you up? That's the actual serving size. Pay attention because you don't know what extra you're getting when you're not watching that serving size. When it comes to sugar, Eden's got the only kind of sugar you should have.
On a serious note, though, pineapples are rich in bromelain, and what that does, that's actually a blood thinner of sorts. It's really good to incorporate normally in your diet. It also helps with the digestion of protein too. So fresh isn't always an option, but if you do need another choice, flash frozen is the way to go. So you want to go through the grocery store and find the aisle where you have all the flash frozen foods. Basically the Bird's Eye, that's exactly how they do theirs, and that's always my go-to.
Keep in mind with cooking foods versus eating them raw, you can get a different amount of vitamins, minerals, and that kind of thing. Cooking in some cases will take away those things, and in other cases it will add. So be careful to look that up, kind of know that information. It changes based on the food. So pretty much everything has a lot of added sugars in it, and it can be confusing in the terminology because it won't just say sugar on it, okay? So really you can look under the carbohydrate label, you'll have your total sugars and then your added sugars underneath. And when you're looking at like corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, dextrose, maltose, any of those things are sugars just under a different name. Also, I wanted to point out these dyes. You got to be really careful. None of these dyes are good for you. They're all bad. A lot of them have been associated with different types of cancers and that kind of thing. So you got to really watch the dyes, the added sugars, and again, we've got some palm oils on there too.
All right, you see a lot of people consuming a lot of energy drinks these days. Not very good. Not good for gut health, not good for inflammation, not good for any of it. On top of having a ton of caffeine, they also have bad sources of B12, believe it or not, some that come from cyanide. One of those actually is Celsius, right? So if you're going to drink these energy drinks, just be aware of what you're doing, what you're putting in your body. There's also other sources that you can use, like coffee, black coffee. That's great, right? And that brings us to breads. Now, everybody loves a good bread. To me, the very best option is going to be like a sourdough version. However, there are other things that you can do as far as get this and not get that. So if I was going to choose a bread, I would of course go with 100% whole wheat, not made with though. You want to do 100% whole wheat itself. There are other options here that are more so vegetable fibers, and they're not really technically the better of the bunch, even though they are low calorically. You're better to go with a little higher caloric bread that has more micronutrients, full of nuts, that type of thing. And thank you to the good people here at Pennington's Food Fair here in Flatwoods, Kentucky.
Remember to shop local, guys.